Welcome to Confrontation of Calling, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of living out your purpose. I am your host, Dianne Reid, and in this show, we're diving deep into the raw truth about confronting, contending for, and confirming your calling. Get ready for real conversations about the highs, the lows, the difficulties, the fears, the triumphs, and the victories about walking boldly in who you have been created to be. No fluff, just the powerful, unfiltered truth and reality of what it takes to thrive in your calling. Welcome back to another episode of Confrontation of Calling. I am your host, Dianne Reid. I am author, speaker, coach, consultant, and above all, I am a child of God. And I'm so glad to have you all back with me for another episode. Episode 9, we are doing this. If you're new to this channel or if you're returning, make sure you subscribe, you like, and you comment. It helps make these videos discoverable for those to be impacted who need to hear these messages. So if it's been blessing you, absolutely make sure you like, you subscribe, and you share. If you're listening to me on any podcasting platforms, make sure you like, you comment, and you review. I'm so thankful for you guys going on this journey with me, and I'm excited to continue this journey with you. Hey listeners, before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something that could change your life. Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck in self-doubt, or battling the constant fear of failure? What if you could shift your mindset to unlock your full potential and start taking bold steps into your dreams? Well, I've got exciting news for you. I'm inviting you to join the Free Your Mind workshop on Wednesday, April 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern. This is a transformative, free workshop designed to help you break free from the barriers that have been holding you back. In this workshop, you'll learn how to transform doubt into confidence, overcome self-doubt and fear, and unlock your true potential. This could be your chance to step into the confident, unstoppable version of yourself. So, if you're ready to break free from the limiting beliefs and move forward into your calling, sign up now for the Free Your Mind workshop. Spots are limited and it's absolutely free. Don't miss out on this life-changing opportunity to clear your mind, focus your energy, and create the life that you deserve to have. Click the link in the show notes or head to confrontationofcalling.com to reserve your spot today. Now back to the show. So let's jump into today's episode. As always, I will start with a personal experience and then we'll jump into the Word of God. For me, for today's topic, we're talking about our relational community. And for me, the more I began to say yes to the Lord, the more my friendships began to shift. And I want to talk about this because I think we talk a lot about relational breakups as it pertains to romantic breakups, but we don't talk about what happens when a friendship comes to an end and what that process looks like, and just being honest and real about what that looks like. So the past year of my life, I mean, the year has been a shifting year, as you've seen in these past couple of episodes, and, with the first episode where I spoke about, the many changes that have taken place. And part of that has been my relational life. The more I began to heal, the more I began to say yes to the Lord and be obedient to the Lord, those around me who did not align to the direction in which I was walking in begin to shift out of the way. And the shifting came in multiple ways. Either they chose to remove themselves, either I had to have the conversation, the Lord telling me, hey, Dianne, a conversation needs to be had with this particular person because the season of this friendship has to end. And when you tell the Lord you'll be obedient for everything, I think for me, I forgot that meant with my personal life, like with my relational life, because I want his will in every aspect of my life. I want his plan for every aspect of my life because I trust him and I trust what he's saying about those areas because he has an eternal perspective, which is much broader and much more limitless than my limited perspective. So as I chose to obey him in my financial life, in my locational life even, I also had to obey him in my relational space. And the more I started having those conversations with those people, the more I realized why the Lord was removing me. And even now, even preparing for this episode, there's just more clarity that comes with reflection. So I ended relationships and friendships that were decades long, like over a decade long. And they came because we were in the same circumstance at the same time. And we absolutely were necessary in each other's lives during that season. But once you start shifting and once your goals start misaligning, the Lord will absolutely cause shifts within your relational life. And I want to talk about in detail how we go about that just through my experience and through what we see in the Word of God. So like I said before, some people actually just start distancing themselves. So I had a couple of relationships where people just started to fall back because they could not relate to me anymore. And I couldn't relate to them in their season. I didn't do the same things. I didn't go the same places. So our similarities no longer were similar. And some people make the choice to remove themselves. And in those aspects, we have to be very comfortable with grieving those relationships, to grieving those friendships, and allowing it to fall where it may. And sometimes we just have to be okay with not getting closure in those instances. Sometimes closure isn't what's necessary to move on. You just have to acknowledge what was, grieve what was, and stay focused on what's going on moving forward. Then I had certain friendships, like I said before, where the Lord absolutely said a conversation needed to be had. I had to be the one who ended the friendship. I had to be the one who had the courageous conversation based off of what the Lord was telling me. And in those instances, I absolutely needed the Lord's wisdom. So I would absolutely go to the Lord and be like, hey, I'm going to need the words to say because I want to honor what was, and I want to communicate as efficiently as possible. And even in those cases, I would even practice what I was going to say with safe spaces, with wise counsel. And I think that's absolutely necessary to ensure that you're communicating, one, in the right spirit, and two, with the right words and in the right tone where the person can understand, where you can really affirm and confirm with yourself that I communicated what I needed to say. Now, what is not your responsibility is the other party's reaction to what you are saying, because there were absolutely situations where I just communicated what the Lord was telling me to do, the truth for my life, and people responded with their own desires and with their own motives and with their own trauma, to be very frank. But their response is not my responsibility. My responsibility was to effectively communicate what needed to be said and to stand on what I said. So that means ending the conversation when the conversation needs to be ended, not having to over-explain yourself, because what the person is looking for is for their own comfort, their own understanding. And sometimes as things are ending, full understanding on the other party's behalf is not it's just really not your responsibility. When you're ending things for your own personal growth, people who are not growing in the same direction will not understand. And that's okay. And you just have to be okay with that and not feel guilty for communicating what the Lord is telling you to do, and not feel guilty for ending what the Lord is already ending. Because what will happen if you don't take the responsibility of ending that friendship and that relationship, the grace for the burden of that friendship, the grace for the burden of that relationship will lift. So now you become more frustrated. Now you become more irritable when the Lord has already told you to distance yourself. Now you become more drained even when the Lord has called you to distance yourself. So I want us to reflect on the areas of friendships specifically. Romantic relationships are included, but specifically as it relates to friendships, where is the Lord calling you to recalibrate what your relational life looks like, right? And when we talk about recalibration, I looked up the definition. Calibration is comparing a measuring instrument's reading to a known standard to ensure accuracy and consistency, and potentially adjusting the instrument to align with that standard. So this is why we have to recalibrate, which just means to calibrate again, right? In one season of life, our standard was a different standard. In one season of life, our standard was not fully known to us until we started obeying the Lord and walking in our calling. But now that we have a new standard, the things around us have to be recalibrated. They have to align to this new standard. And as it pertains to friendship, the Bible talks about bad company corrupting good character, right? That's Proverbs 12:26. So what makes company bad? Company that is compromising the character in which the Lord is building you in this season. So your standard for character, your standard for movement, your standard for how you move in the world changes as you continue to discover who the Lord has created you to be, and continues to change as you surrender to the call over your life. That means my company has to be recalibrated in order to align to my character. So company becomes bad when it's not aligned to the character that the Lord is building in you. And that's what happened with me. My standards started changing because I wanted to align my life to who the Lord created me to be. I wanted to align my life to His word. I wanted to align my life with His desires for me. So all the things around me had to be recalibrated. The Bible also says in Proverbs 26:17, iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens another, right? So this comes to the fact of the people around you are supposed to be strengthening you in the areas where you're weak. And you should be doing the same with the people in your life. Iron can only sharpen another iron if that iron is sharper. That means there's one sharp, there's one dull. And the sharpness of the other iron can increase the sharpness of another iron. It's lending its sharpness. It's giving its sharpness to another piece of iron. And that's what our friendship should look like. In areas where you're weak, in areas where you may not be thriving in a particular season, you should absolutely have people around you who can strengthen you in those areas. But as your standard changes, the level of sharpness that you need around you, the level of strength that you need around you also changes. So where in the areas of your weakness are your friends actually sharpening you and strengthening you? This is how you know that the people around you are good for you because they call you up, they call you higher, they call you into the purpose of the Lord. They don't let you stay in your baggage. They don't let you stay in your bondage. They don't let you stay in places where the Lord is trying to pull you out of. But that requires strength. That requires a grace that the Lord gives them in order to pull you out. And the same goes for you, for them. It is a reciprocal relationship. So where in the areas of your life do you need stronger friendships? And where in the areas of your life is the Lord calling you to release those friendships that no longer serve the season that you're in? If bad company corrupts good character, that means the people around you absolutely can influence you out of the will of the Lord. That's how serious your friendships and your relational life is. That's how serious your friendships and your relational life are. It has that much influence on you. And I even want to show how Jesus, dealt with the relational aspects of his life. And it highlights what I said before. So in Luke 4:21 through 30, Jesus is back at Nazareth and he reads the scrolls and he reveals to his hometown that he is the Son of God. Now, because everyone is familiar with a version of Jesus that they knew in one season, they could not receive this version of Jesus, this truth about who he is and who he always was, that he is the Son of God, that he is God in flesh. They wanted to push him away and stone him and throw him off of a cliff. So sometimes when you start walking in who God has created you to be, people will push you away. They cannot handle this revelation of who you are. And it's not particularly an indictment on them. It just means they no longer are supposed to be in your community. Then we have in Matthew 14:23, when after Jesus heals and feeds the multitudes, he begins to push the crowd away for solitude and to go to the next thing. So there are absolutely times when you have to push, when you have to remove people, where that responsibility is on you. You have to be bold enough to remove and to push the things out of your life that the Lord is telling you to push out of your life. The season of feeding them, the season of healing them, the season of pouring into them is over. So now it's time to remove them. And that responsibility is on you. And then one of my favorite things that Jesus always does, and I think I spoke about this in a previous episode, is how he just disappears from the crowd. He just disappears from all the noise to be with the Father and to be by himself. So there are certain times where you just have to remove yourself entirely. Like there have been situations where the Lord has caused my phone to not even connect to certain people at certain times. I remember when the Lord was first talking to me about quitting my job and all of that, my SIM card stopped working. I spoke about that in the very first episode. My SIM card stopped working, and the Lord just told me not to get a new SIM card yet. So I literally did not have access to my phone unless I was on Wi-Fi. And what the Lord was trying to do was to reveal the people to me who were actually concerned about my life, who I actually wanted to be connected to. Because I think when we have contacts in our phone and when we have people that we talk to on a maybe consistent basis, we don't realize who are actually the important people in our lives until something, I don't want to say tragic happens, but until something shifts. So when people couldn't access me for their needs or for their motives, it revealed to me that they were only coming to me for them to be satisfied and not for a concern over my actual life. So I had to remove myself. The Lord caused me to remove myself from certain people, where literally communication just had to be cut off. Point blank, period. Because certain situations are so toxic, Certain situations are so draining where you literally just have to put the boundary up and remove yourself. And it may sound harsh, but some people will not understand your boundary unless you execute it. I'm not talking to you anymore. I feel like the Lord is giving us the courage, giving us the wisdom and the strategy on how to accurately and effectively manage our relational calibration. What's helpful is having community around you, safe spaces who can absolutely give you wisdom and strategy on how to do that. People who care about where the Lord is sending you and who care about what's going on in your life. They can absolutely give you wisdom on how to maneuver in this relational calibration. But just know it's because your standard has changed. So your community has to change. Sometimes the Lord will absolutely remove you out of a thing completely. No explanation. And you just have to be okay with that. You just have to submit and surrender to what He's doing. I know that sounds like ghosting, but I feel like ghosting is when you absolutely should have had a conversation and you refuse to. That's moving in cowardice. That's moving in fear. Some situations the Lord really just takes you out and says no more talking. You've put the boundary up, and that's okay. So may we all have the courage to recalibrate our relationships, all of them, no matter what they look like. May we all have the courage to put the proper boundaries up to protect the new standard in which we walk in our calling. That's all I had for us today. As you're doing this relational calibration, you are absolutely making room for the right people to come in place. And you are prioritizing the right relationships in the right season. That's why it's necessary. You have to align your priorities, even as it pertains to people, to the season that the Lord has placed you in. Bad company corrupts good character. So how are you protecting your character in this season? I love you deeply. Know that you are deeply loved, you are chosen, and you are worthy of the call that is over your life. Not because you work for it, but because God says you are worthy. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.